Joining me today is someone you all know, Torres-Springer, the Commissioner of the City's Department of Small Business Services. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here.
And we'll get on some of the main programs you're working on in just a moment, but obviously some of the biggest news right now is up in Albany. The session has been extended. There are a lot of things that have yet to be worked out. It looks like it's going to go into next week. And I wanted to start off by asking you what is the city looking for Albany to do, if there's anything you're still watching, any legislation, and specifically within your department?
Well, first of all, thanks, John, and thanks to Can Capital and to City and State for hosting this morning's event. Really happy to be here to talk about our programs and also to hear about the challenges that small businesses face here in New York City so that we can continue to improve on the programs that we have. Specific to your question, one of the main pieces of legislation that we at the Department of Small Business Services are tracking in particular and have been working on are changes that we are seeking to state law to open more doors for the city's minority and women businesses. And so as many of you know, MWBEs are an important part not just of neighborhood economies, but certainly for the city's economy. And we think that on the government contracting end, we need to make sure that contracting reflects the great diversity of business owners in the city. So the changes that we have been seeking essentially provide more opportunities to MWBEs and give us the same tools that the state currently does in order to be able to award more contracts to MWBEs. They run the gamut from increasing thresholds, for instance, for discretionary spending, allowing us to do more pre-qualifications and mentorship programs. So we're very optimistic. We're working really hard. There's obviously a lot going on in Albany, but we're hopeful that we can see these changes that will allow us to advance our MWBE goals.
And any sense of how likely that legislation is to pass? Have you heard from lawmakers up in Albany on that?
We are continuing to speak with the lawmakers in Albany and working with advocates across the city, and so we remain hopeful.
And MWBEs is something we at City and State have been paying attention to for a while, but it's also been in the news more broadly. There have been some criticisms of the city's efforts. Even Bertha Lewis put out a report earlier this year, drawing attention to how the city has not kept up with the state. How much of it is these structural things or laws that need to be changed? How much of it is a leadership thing? Some critics have said Andrew Cuomo did the right thing by naming a diversity officer and really making it a high-profile issue. So again, how much of it is leadership? How much of it is these laws that need to change?
First, the investment in and expansion of our MWBE program we believe is absolutely critical if we are to advance the mayor's goal of really fighting inequality in all its forms. We've already seen some really good progress in terms of the city's efforts here. For instance, comparing FY14, fiscal year 14 to 13, there was a 57% increase in the awards made to MWBEs through city contracting, and through One NYC, which is the mayor's blueprint for sustainability and growth in New York. The administration made a commitment to award $16 billion to MWBEs over the course of the next 10 years. In order to reach that goal, we think we have a very aggressive plan that essentially has 3 pillars. And to your question earlier, each of those pillars addresses the barriers that exist today that really run the gamut in order for us to most effectively do this work. So the first pillar is making sure that we are increasing the pipeline and capacity of MWBEs, not just easing the process for certification, for instance, and then expanding the capacity building programs that we have so that MWBEs are better able to compete for and perform on contracts. We're also, the second P is performance, so holding agencies accountable to their goals and providing opportunities like the procurement fair that we just had here a few weeks ago, which was the largest largest ever, over 700 MWBEs connecting with agencies. And the last one, specific to your question, the third P is policy. And so we are aggressively pursuing whether they are the state law changes that I talked about earlier, but really all other policy levers that we have. For instance, in the renegotiation of the project labor agreements that was just announced a couple of weeks ago, there are changes to that also open more doors for MWBEs. And so those are the three Ps, led, of course, by what is a number of individuals, not just in one agency, but across several agencies working towards the mayor's goal. The MWBE director is Maya Wiley. She's a fantastic individual, and what's important about her holding that role is that she has she's in regular contact with the mayor on a whole variety of issues. And so the MWBE issues are front and center of the mayor's agenda. And given her role as counsel to the mayor, it allows us to keep this agenda in front of them every day. And it's really that combination that will allow us to advance these goals. At the end of the day, we share all of the same goals as advocates and individuals like Bertha and like different other partners in government, and we're going to move aggressively in all those fronts.
And just one quick follow-up before moving on. Bertha Lewis, I think, mentioned maybe a 30% goal would be a good target. And you've seen the governor have different targets that he's met over the years, 10% and up to 20%. Does the city have a specific target for the percentage of city contracts going to MWBEs?
Well, as I mentioned before, we did announce a $16 billion commitment over the course of the next 10 years. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is we are right now in the middle of what's called a disparity study. So the disparity study is essentially the legal underpinning for the MWBE program, where we go out and essentially try to understand the universe of MWBEs who are out there who are able to contract with the city and compare that number to current utilization across different agencies of MWBEs. And that allows us to reset goals if need be, but that's a very comprehensive process that we are undertaking right now to ensure that that the goals that we have today are the right ones.
And that's, I think, a good segue to another initiative you launched since coming on, the Women Entrepreneurs NYC, or We NYC.
Yes.
That really focus on women entrepreneurs across the 5 boroughs, trying to help them. How successful has that initiative been so far?
So We NYC was, Women Entrepreneurs NYC, was started based on the belief that women are economic actors in our city, and that by lifting up that woman, it's not just about her and her business. You're really also lifting up her family, the entire neighborhood, and really the city's economy. So we've seen a tremendous growth of women entrepreneurs in New York City, about 50% across the city. But we also know that there's a gender gap, an entrepreneurship gender gap, that men still own 1.5 times more businesses, employ 3.5 times more employees, and have revenues that are still 4.5 times larger than that of your typical women-owned business. So we think that it is our opportunity really to really close that gap. So that's why we launched We NYC. And what that will do, its goal is to reach 5,000 women over the course of the next 3 years, providing different programs that address issues that we are hearing from women today that exist in them trying to start or grow their business, running the gamut from access to capital, networking and mentoring, skill building, and having all of the information about how to start your business, which now lots of different, whether it's community-based or government organizations, provide all in one place. So we're going to build out all of those initiatives while at the same time already running new programs, new partnerships, for instance, with Grameen, as well as Goldman Sachs' 10,000 Small Businesses program.
And up in Albany, obviously, the big issue is rents and rent regulations. Those have expired, and there's just short-term extension. But I want to talk about commercial rents. Mm-hmm. I know that's an issue for small businesses in New York City. In your view, how much of a challenge is it, the rising rents for small businesses? And what is your department doing to address that?
So we certainly know, I mean, I hear every day the pressures that different small businesses across the city face as it relates to rising rents. The other thing, however, that we know and understand is that as rents rise, a lot of other underlying challenges, whether that's access to capital, online competition, changing demographics, all of those get exacerbated as rent issues appear. And so we are, there are a number of things that we are undertaking in order to address this issue. First, they're the programs that we already have. So for those who don't know, we have a network of bricks and mortar business solution centers across the city that provide resources from financing, recruiting, all of which will really help a business's bottom line. We've also undertaken an initiative called Small Business First, which is about cutting red tape and reducing the burden of regulation in small businesses. Again, these are efforts that at the end of the day help a business's bottom line so they're better able to meet the challenges of changing marketplaces. Having said that, we know that rent issues are of a particular concern. So we are building out today a number of programs that will allow existing businesses have more negotiating leverage, essentially, with their landlords, as well as to increase transparency in the commercial real estate market. And these programs will run the gamut from enhanced pro bono legal assistance, more information about how to be savvy in negotiating your lease and having that information available online and on a one-on-one basis. It will include online tools that will provide more real-time information on the commercial real estate market. And finally, some new programs that in particular will help and promote long-standing small businesses in neighborhoods that have long anchored these communities, but might be facing challenges due to the changing economics of the neighborhood. So though we are developing the specific details of those programs, we hope to launch them soon, but they will be part of what is really a more comprehensive effort that the city is undertaking. So it's not just the Department of Small Business Services, but other agencies in government have really joined this effort, and we hope to be able to announce a comprehensive set of tools in the coming weeks.
And about a year ago, the New York City Council introduced something called the Small Business Job Survival Act. And I'm not sure if that went anywhere, but it would have set up a small business lease program to help businesses struggling with rising rents. Did the administration have any position on that particular bill or that broader concept?
Yeah.
As something to pursue?
So that particular bill, together with a few others that are addressing somewhat the same issue, we are currently reviewing in the administration. I think all ideas are on the table. It's a very complex challenge, and we don't think there's one silver bullet to this. And so as we develop the comprehensive set of solutions, we'll look at every tool that we have, from the proactive supports that a department like Small Business Services provides to the tools that are available in other agencies to legislation. And I think really it's in that kind of constellation of all those tools will we really come up with a set of solutions that will help businesses facing this pressure today.
And last month, the Wall Street Journal reported that the mayor had proposed increasing funding to your department by, I think, 73.5%. So a substantial sum added to your budget. One, do you know the status of that? And two, where would the bulk of that additional money go?
So one, we're very grateful for the additional investment that the city is making in our programs. And maybe just to step back a little bit, all of what it's no secret to everyone in this room that the singular animating motivation of this administration is to fight inequality in all its forms, all its fronts, building a city where everyone rises together. For us at SBS, what that means is driving an agenda of shared prosperity. So where growth and inclusion are essentially two sides of the same coin. And then in particular, for our work, it's about connecting people to good jobs, creating stronger businesses, and building a fair economy. The additional funding that we're fortunate to have over the course of the next few fiscal years will allow us to then expand programs in each of those three buckets. So just to give you an example, on the good jobs front, we have additional funding to do more training for New Yorkers so they can connect to jobs with good wages and real advancement opportunities across different sectors: healthcare, tech, construction, industrial, retail, and food. And building stronger businesses, the funding is going, for instance, to investments in small business first. So we'll be able to build, for instance, an online portal where all of your transactions and relationships with the city, instead of you having to go to 12 different government websites, will now all be in one place. And then additional personnel to help walk you through what those regulations are before there's a fine, before there's a violation. And then in the building a fair economy, a lot of that funding is going towards the We NYC initiative, as well as expanded MWBE capacity building programs. So they're really fairly evenly split across our work on workforce development, small business development, and then more particular efforts with certain communities that may have been underserved in the past, to make sure that we're targeting our resources where the need is greatest.
And you did serve in the Bloomberg administration as well, and at the Economic Development Corporation. And one thing you did is help lead the Applied Sciences NYC initiative to help build these new tech campuses in the city. And just this week, there was the groundbreaking on the Roosevelt Island campus. The prior mayor, the current mayor were there.
That's right.
And I want to know, is there more to come along those lines? You know, more tech campuses?
Well, the Applied Sciences Initiative was one that recognized that as the tech industry was growing, or a few years ago it was still nascent, that there were certain catalytic investments that needed to be made in order to increase engineering and applied sciences talent in New York City, in order to promote that growth. And so the investments were not just with Cornell Technion, but also institutions like NYU and Columbia. And as we look to kind of the focus of this administration, of course, making sure that all of those projects continue, break ground, build up, expand. The administration has been very supportive of those efforts. But to give you a sense of what might be a shift, right, as we think about what does it mean to grow tech. Right now, there are 300,000 jobs in the tech ecosystem, with another 100,000 projected over the course of the next several years. We think that's great. We should continue to promote the growth of the tech industry in New York City. Where this administration, however, is making an even greater investment is to make sure that as those jobs come online, that they're available to homegrown New Yorkers. So that's why we launched something called the Tech Talent Pipeline a year ago, which is a $10 million, 3-year over 3 years initiative in order to make sure that we are understanding what the needs are of employers in tech. And it's not just startups, because tech is really in every sector of the economy, understanding what those jobs are that run the gamut, what the skills are that those employers need, and then building the training programs that connect New Yorkers from across the 5 boroughs to those jobs. And so I hope that's an example of how in many ways we are in tech building on some prior initiatives, but also making a very deliberate effort to ensure that as growth happens, it's as inclusive as possible.
Another thing you focused on is immigrant entrepreneurs. What are you doing on that front?
So in New York City, of course, we've always been a city of immigrants. Right now, 6 out of 10 New Yorkers are immigrants or children of immigrants, and half of our small business owners are immigrants, and immigrants are also twice as likely to be business owners. So in some ways, this is our constituency, right? And what we've done at SBS over the course of the last 14 months is really make a very aggressive effort to make sure that our immigrant services are as effective and as robust as possible. So what has that meant? That has meant, for instance, doubling the number of business courses that are available through our centers in languages other than English. It means launching programs like the Immigrant Business Initiative, where we are working with community-based organizations on the ground that immigrants trust in order to deliver these services in all of the right languages and in the communities. We've also forged a partnership with the 3 library systems, again, trusted institutions, so that we have not just putting collateral in the libraries, but training library staff in immigrant-rich communities, and also holding our courses in library branches. We also released just a couple of weeks ago a report that's on our website at nyc.gov/immigrant businesses. That's a part of our site. That is a blueprint for our work going forward in this area. It's called Unlocking Potential, Empowering New York City's Immigrant Entrepreneurs. And we've committed to a whole set of new goals that include reaching 10,000, an additional 10,000 immigrant businesses by 2018. Increasing our business education courses 6-fold in all of the right languages other than English, training 50 community-based organizations on business education work, and developing an immigrant business toolkit in at least 6 languages, Spanish, Chinese, Korean, Haitian Creole, Arabic, and Bengali, in order to ensure that not just immigrant businesses, but the organizations that work with them have really accessible information on all of the services available for immigrants. So as you can see, it's we're really excited about this work and certainly looking forward to continuing to expand it.
I think we'll have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience, but first, just one last question. Kyle Kimball stepped down as president of the Economic Development Corporation, I think this month. There's an interim person leading it. Your name has been floated as someone that might be a good candidate to take over there. Would you have any interest in the job? You worked there before. So.
I did work there. I'm currently the Commissioner of the Department of Small Business Services, very happy where I am, and we work every day with EDC. So in many ways, it's almost like I already work there. It's a great partnership, and as I mentioned before, the agenda of inclusive growth and economic development strategy that is focused on making sure that prosperity is widely shared, that involves a very close SBS EDC relationship, and I hope that's something that will continue.
Okay, any questions? We'll start in the back, and if you could say your name.
Hello, my name is Sarah Diaz. I'm with the Office of State Senator Liz Kruger. As many of you are aware, I'm unaware the senator has been introducing a marijuana tax and regulate bill, which would be similar to legislation passed in Colorado, which means that people in this state would be able to be producers, distributors, and retailers in the marijuana industry. Our main problem in the bill is finding language that includes local hiring and making sure those that are have been directly impacted by the drug war become producers directly, distributors, and retailers in the industry. So my question is, what kind of advice could the Small Business Services give us to include this in our bill to make sure that if it does pass, we do have these folks coming along and being small business owners and directly involved in that economy?
Not having reviewed the bill, I'll comment on the workforce development side. A service that we provide to all businesses in New York City, and one that I think ensures that New Yorkers have access to good jobs is our work through our Workforce One career centers. And so, for instance, when there is an economic development project that, say, EDC runs, we have a program called Hire NYC. And so what we make sure of is the employer works with us so that people who we serve through our Workforce One systems have access to those jobs. And so, again, putting aside the actual bill, to the extent that there are employers who need access to talent, that is what we do all day long, and we would be more than happy. We do it everywhere we can, and we'd be more than happy to work with any employer who wants to avail themselves of talented job seekers in New York City.
Okay. Last question.
Yes, just want to make an observation. You talked about the diversity of procurement.
I think someone wants to hear what your name is first, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Thomas Lopez Pierre. I'm a candidate for City Council in the 7th Council District in Upper Manhattan. You were talking about the procurement. I have to admit, I've just become educated on this, and I didn't realize that 90% of the business, that the $18 billion that the city does business with, is with white males. And when we consider Black and Latinos are 45% of the city's population for some time, this is almost institutional. This is almost institutional racism. When you look on the corners in the hood, you see all these young Black men on the street with no jobs. I will end by saying that last week, a company, street paving, the white lines said, you know, Denville, New Jersey. We're importing white males from New Jersey to do work that so many people in New York City could be doing, and our city and our taxpayers are paying for it. What is the mayor going to be doing? And to be fair to him, at least he's talking about the issue, what is he going to be doing to take these young Black men off the street and putting them to work? Something on the cockroach. Nobody bring it from home.
I hope not either. But no, thank you for those. Thank you for your comments. It is, of course, when we say we're fighting inequality, that is those are the individuals who we need to help, right? And we have to use every tool that we have. So on the procurement end, the MWBE program, because MWBEs, it's not only investing in businesses that are in New York City that are diverse, but they also tend to hire more people of color, more local people. And so that is why all of the programs that I mentioned before, we are aggressively moving forward on all of them, because we know that procurement is a really important and valuable tool in order to make a dent in this issue. And some of it we can do now, and so we're pushing forward. Others are more structural in that they need changes in law, which is why we're in Albany, for instance, trying to get those changes. And then on the hiring front, there's a report that we released a few months ago called Career Pathways, and it's about fundamentally redesigning the public workforce system so that it's not just about connecting people to any job, but connecting people to good jobs with good wages and good benefits. And two things that are a part of that I think are very relevant to your question. One is we've committed to establishing a first look or first source hiring program. So what does that mean? That means that to the extent that there is an investment made by government through procurement, that we will ensure that those vendors are required to use the public workforce system so that we can get the individuals who are served by that system, New Yorkers, into those jobs and really connect that to as many contracts as possible. The second thing is really investing in training that allows individuals who, if they're not ready today, with a little bit of training, they might be ready, and that is our commitment to jobs across all of these sectors, whether it's construction or tech or industrial, where there are opportunities for good employment. And so to solve that problem, we're using every tool that we have at our disposal, and of course, always happy to hear suggestions on how that work can be deepened.
Okay. We are out of time, and we're going to go directly into the next panel, so they can start coming up. But first, let's give the commissioner a hand. Thank you.